Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Shantia here. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing a review for Married at First Sight. I'm also doing a series called the Heal, Feel, and Reveal series. Make sure you check it out. I'm uploading my food video jam-packed with an incredible amount of tips and mindset approaches to how I've learned to stay slim over the years. And I'll go ahead and put up some pictures here. I went from this to this. So as you can see, my relationship to food has transformed and shifted over the years, and I've learned how to maintain a very healthy lifestyle. Let's go ahead and get into this review. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. So in this episode, the couples were getting essentially some therapy from Dr. Pepper and Pastor Cal. They were getting some words of advice from them, trying to see where they could make progress. Straight off the bat, my overall review for the advice that Pastor Cal and Dr. Pepper gave was that it was overall really good. I felt like they gave really good advice. I think, you really start to see their years of experience when they're coaching them. I think when they coach them individually, they're great. But sometimes I feel like when it comes to how they're pairing them and then how they coach them on top of that, I feel like it's not quite just, and I'll get to that shortly. Okay, so the first couple we're going to start with is Christina and Elijah. So in this episode, Christina and Elijah are continuing to get to know each other. They've kind of gotten over the hump of their conflict and their obstacles, and now they're kind of blending together a little bit more effectively, and they're finding ways to get along. What I liked about Pastor Cal is that he pointed out that Christina focuses on the resolution of a partnership. So she tries to find a way to get along. Overall, my concern has always been from episode 1, I think, is she voicing her opinion fully? And I don't really think it's coming through. And I think that's just because Elijah just has such a strong mindset about how he sees things. And when you're paired with someone who has such a strong mindset, unless they take you and they take your presence in their life very seriously, they might not take your opinions as seriously. There's always this sense that Elijah is measuring the worthiness of Christina. But what did come through during her session with Pastor Cal was that she struggles with the vulnerability of their partnership. She struggles with whether she wants to give that vulnerability to him. Throughout the entire episode, both Pastor Cal and Dr. Pepper kept pointing out, don't judge ahead based off of a desire that you're needing to be met. Don't judge that your relationship can succeed or not succeed based off of that. Like, allow yourself to be more open and be more vulnerable to the possibilities. And I think that's great. But I also think as far as vulnerability goes, I do see that Christina is holding herself back just in general. I think it doesn't matter who she was paired with or what partner she would be paired with, no matter what. If she was paired with someone, she was always going to be struggling with that vulnerability because of what she's experienced in the past. My question to that is, like, why sign up for a show called Married at First Sight? When you've gone through that kind of experience, why not go through the traditional courting experience of getting to know someone? The vulnerability thing, I understand it, but at the same time, what I also think Christina is doing well is she is kind of pacing herself because she's watching for Elijah. And reality, when it comes to two people coming into a relationship together, masculine and feminine energy, I think to some degree, someone has to show their worthiness of your affection and for that to be had. Maybe if Elijah and Christina do put more vulnerability, open themselves up and are willing to put themselves more at risk, then they might see quicker results. However, I don't blame Christina at all for holding back. It's like he has some chaotic ways that need to be dealt with, but he has a heart of gold. That's, I think, what helps her to kind of lean towards him whenever they're going through their own struggles. So when it came to Elijah, he had his conversation with Dr. Pepper. We all saw how that went. Immediately, his ego took over. So he has a whole reshaping. He's needing to reshape and redo and restructure his relationship to his ego, because he lets his ego essentially decide for him a lot of how things turn out and a lot of his decisions in his life. As soon as she started talking about, hey, you're belittling her, this is what's been said, this is what we're observing, he got immediately defensive. And that's problematic, and that really points to his immaturity, because the mature side of you would say, okay, maybe I am doing some things wrong. But he wasn't even willing to admit that. He just let his ego take over. He got immediately defensive and he made it all about, I'm not belittling her. She literally said, when you were having that conversation with Dr. Viviana, the two of you, she literally said that you were belittling her. So, I think he did take his words back, because when he was having his conversation with Keisha and the guys during the after party, he said, yeah, I know my ways are wrong. And he reminds me a lot of people I know in my life who have been impulsive, who have let their egos and their anger run amok, but at the same time have really good hearts. They want to do good. It's just the passion takes over. And Mark was mentioning that, oh, he's just so passionate and he feels so much for her. And I'm like, that's not an excuse. You still have to have emotional control in every situation, no matter what, because if you let people control you emotionally, then you're not going to have control over your decisions or your actions in life. You're always going to be doing things based off of how you feel. And when Elijah was talking to Dr. Pepper, and he's painting this picture of how him and Katina are in this together and the world is against them, to me, that's not fostering a really healthy partnership or an ecosystem with one another. Because if your relationship is healthy, you should have some people who are pointing out those healthy traits too. I honestly don't think Mark is the best reference for that healthy balance in a partnership. I would just have to totally disagree. You can be very passionate, but you have to learn how to either contain it or to redirect that passion into things, or in a way that's healthier and not towards anger and getting upset at people and taking your anger out on people. Overall, he has a very idealistic idea of marriage, but I think he also means, well, they have the potential to work through things. It's just going to be difficult. And I really kind of feel for Katina on that sense. He does dominate the situation, and I feel like it's very hard to have a voice in a situation, in a partnership like that. Let's go ahead and move on to Noi and Steve. So Noi and Steve are still working through kind of the same issues together. When Noi had her meeting with Pastor Cal, they went ahead and they talked about she had used social media and perhaps needed to find healthier ways to express her emotions. So I called this out in my previous review when I talked about she has a hard time expressing her anger. She's so soft-spoken. And in fact, when they were having that conversation, her and Pastor Cal were talking about her needs needing to be met. When they were having that conversation about how she doesn't ask of him, or hasn't had that conversation with him about the finances, she's so afraid to talk about that. I was like, well, that explains a lot. That explains why he's been able to get away with not really talking about anything, because she's been so afraid to bring it up. She's very hesitant. It's very passive aggressive, but passive aggressive is not healthy, because when you keep holding back all of those feelings, emotions, and thoughts, which Steve communicated, and he validated that. He said that in the after party, he says he's always finding out things a lot later. She has a hard time communicating about things. When you're holding things back so much, you're gonna have all this pent up resentment. In my opinion, when people are very passive aggressive, it's an anger problem, but it's like an imploding anger problem. Whereas Elijah Wan's anger is more of external, it's obvious, and it's exploding. She has an imploding anger issue. So she gets angry, holds it in, and then ends up doing these things like on social media, when really Steve is just like, hey, you can talk to me anytime. I hope she works through that. I think that experts, they talked about the social media, but I don't think they really communicated to her, or they even pinpointed that she has issues communicating. As a child, maybe her parents were working so hard that maybe she had these frustrations she was going through and all these emotions she was going through, but she didn't express it. She held them in. She seems like a very emotional person. And so it's like when you're so emotional and you don't have an outlet for that, or no one's teaching you to express that, maybe her parents were so busy surviving. I'm just projecting. I'm just theorizing here. But if your parents are so busy working and they don't have the energy or the time to bring to you to talk to you about your emotions, then you're going to have all this pent up feelings. I hope that Noi recognizes it. It has nothing to do with Steve. It has everything to do with you. He's just your mirror. He's there to show you what you need to work on. And so long as you're willing to work on those communication issues and acknowledge that you have them, then we can work through some things. Now, Pastor Cal was trying to point out to Noi, you need to communicate your basic needs, right? Your basic need is that you need the finances, right? So you need to communicate that. I mentioned that before. It's a basic need. It's a basic requirement. That's something you need to communicate. But let me just say in general, I'm probably going to go on a whole spew about this. As a woman getting into a relationship, you absolutely deserve to know with crystal clear clarity what your partner's financial situation is. The fact that Steve didn't just come straight to her and communicate that to me is a warning, because I'm like, okay, she already asked you, albeit very subtly, maybe too softly, but she already asked you many times, why not just give it to her, right? Give her that information. And then I'll get to Steve and Noi's conversation with one another. During Steve's conversation with Dr. Pepper said that, I think she's expressed clearly what she needs from you. So I was getting kind of like two stories. Like Pastor Cal's like, you need to emphasize it, but Dr. Pepper's like, no, we picked up on it pretty clearly. And she's like, why don't you just give her a plan? And in a way, I had kind of issues with that coaching or that session because I felt like she was basically feeding him the answers. To some degree, perhaps the experts have a tendency to do that because this is a fast process. And if you feed them some of those questions really quickly, they can figure out how to apply it. But sometimes I feel like maybe they need a little bit more effective coaching so they can figure out and pinpoint what the problem is for themselves because they're kind of missing it. And sometimes people, they're going to keep making the same mistakes because they're not ready to see the truth of it. But she's like, hey, why don't you give Noi a plan and talk to her and ask her and this and this and this. It's come up time and time again. Steve has talked about, well, I want to be like, I want to do me. I want to be more creative. I have these apps. Why hasn't it been cleared? Though that's my issue with Steve. Okay, so later Steve and Noi were having a conversation with one another. And Steve was saying, hey, you can't just be going on social media. This is not okay with me. And Noi got defensive and she's like, well, it's my social media. And I'm like, girl, here's my thing. If your spouse brings something up, listen to them. It bothers them. Listen to what bothers them so that you can maintain your partnership. You're already putting cracks in the foundation. So if your spouse feels the need to bring up specifically social media, these posts on social media bother me, it bothers them. You need it as your partner, as the partner, and as the reciprocal in that partnership. It's your responsibility to be like, oh, but why? Not get defensive. You're on the same team. We need to figure out how to work with one another. And if we're going to work with one another, obviously we're not going to like everything that each other does. But if someone brings something up, obviously it bothers them. And the way he brought it up was respectful, as opposed to the way Elijah wants kind of aggressively come at Katina with words about how she's not doing certain things. No, but he's brought it up. He's like, no, this bothers me. He brought it up once, twice, and now he brought it up again. No, this really bothers me. But she continues to ignore it. He even mentioned it slightly, and he's like, it's my need. But she was just like, no, it's my social media. You have to listen to that. That's maturity in relationships. This person's asking something of you. They need this. And, I never really understood why people insisted on fighting about these little issues and their egos, because to me, if I'm going to be with you every day, I want to create the most harmonious environment and the most joyful environment as possible in a world where there's so much conflict and struggle and emotional turmoil. I want my home to be an oasis, a safe haven. So why would I go out of my way to disturb that harmony? It's my responsibility to figure out how to come together so that we can create that with one another. I just never understood. But it's like when you don't do the healing and when you have so much inner work to do, you're not ready to be in a partnership. And it's so crazy. Sorry, I'm totally going off tangent, but I found a video of myself 7 years ago. And I was like, I can't get into a relationship until I know who I am, until I know my emotional needs. And I was like, I need a lot of independence. I knew myself so well 7 years ago. 7 years ago. Okay, so moving on. Back to Steve. Okay, so that's my thing with Noi is this is your husband. He's asking something of you. He's communicated it kindly to you. Set aside that ego, that pettiness, whatever that is, and woman up. Let's talk about the financial thing. Steve sat down with Noi and he's like, okay, we're gonna come up with a plan. It was all hypothetical. I didn't see any numbers. I didn't see the bank account. Even during the after party at that point, in the previous episode, Noi said she hadn't seen how much money he had. She just threw out a random number. Keisha mentioned that the $40,000 to Steve, and Steve's like, oh, well, she's good then. But I'm like, but why didn't you tell her that? This is your wife. Why do you not want to reassure her that you have her covered for that? I'm like, this is your wife. You guys should be able to share your finances together. You're legally binded. Now, this is what I'm going to say for the women out there. By the way, if you are new to my channel, this channel is dedicated to helping women live in the way that feels the most natural to them. Totally forgot to mention all of this, but here I am. I'm mentioning it now. Okay. Women out there, you deserve to have options. Now, one of the main and obvious reasons as to why you want a partner who is financially stable, you want to see the numbers, is because you need options. Now, I don't know about you. I know motherhood puts a lot of strain on women because they're naturally very motherly and very nurturing, and they have a tendency to give their kids everything. So if as a mother, you're having to work and like raise the kids at the same time, it can be very draining and exhausting. You deserve, I was going to say you need, but you deserve the option to not work should you have kids that you're raising up into the world. You deserve to have the options. So I feel like generally in the United States, it's not accepted idea that women should have that option. We live more in these 50-50 households. We are 50-50 energetically. We don't have to be 50-50 financially. And even then you can work, but you deserve options. So if you can work and decide not to work for a while you have kids, go ahead and do that. But I'm like, to some degree, I feel like I would rather stay single if I would have to like work to death and raise my kids at the same time. I would want the option to pull back on work less, should I have kids that I'm raising, to give them my life force energy to raise them. Yeah. I would rather just be single, if that's the case. If you're not going to help me with the finances, I'm not going to have it be a burden upon me that you don't know how to be a provider in this partnership. And that's kind of an expectation for me. And I'm like, if you have that expectation for your partner, you deserve that. Like, make peace with that. I don't care what anyone says about men and women working and what's fair and what's not fair. We're not the same. Our bodies work differently. Women have delicate bodies. Okay, we have delicate bodies. That's why we don't have women Olympians and men Olympians competing together at the same level. Our bodies are different. They function different. Okay, so thank you. There's my run for Senate. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to Jasmina and Michael. So Jasmina and Michael, the thing that's been the conflict between the two of them time and time again has been the connection. There's just not quite a connection that's building up, and I think part of it is just that there isn't a connection. So Jasmina mentioned that when Michael touches her, she doesn't feel anything. Michael, honestly, he seems scared to me. I feel like he's just kind of lacking the confidence. As soon as they were kissing at some point, he mentioned this, and then he told Pastor Kel, well, she told me she was just doing it out of obligation, so I told her to pull back. It's very gentlemanly of you, Michael, but I also feel like you need to, I feel like to some degree, like as a man, don't you have that primal desire? Your wife is beautiful, you're attracted to her, you're enjoying her company. Wouldn't you want to be affectionate with her? So I just feel like he's being way too careful. He's way too in his head and overthinking everything. I feel like for Jasmine, it's the same thing, because she's talking about with Dr. Pepper, well, I need this from him in order for him. I need this from him. He needs to be open with me for him to have the vulnerability. I'm like, forget the math. Okay, you guys are trying to be in this partnership. Just open yourself up, go date each other and go have some fun. Okay? I'm like, I don't think they can even get started or lifted off. They can't even lift off or take off because they're so stuck in like, well, I need this from you in order for me to get, no, stop. That's not love. That's not unconditional love. That's not how love works. Just give of yourself what you can and give it without expecting anything in return. Give what you can, that you're okay with giving, that you do not expect in return, and see what happens. The minute you start getting in your head, you start calculating, love cannot happen. It cannot happen, because love is not numbers. Okay? All right. My other last comment to say about Jasmina is that she says she trusts people until they give them a reason not to. Lindsey is the same way. I don't really understand this philosophy of life. I trust God. That's it. People are finicky. Now, trust to me takes years to build. what I'm doing is I'm having faith and belief that maybe I'm going to be in your presence, but I always trust that God can carry me through things and through experiences. So even if I'm around a person, I'll trust that God will tell me if this is the right person for me or the wrong person for me. And that God will tell me that this, in spite of the situations, God will keep me safe. That's always been the way I've thought about things. And to me, trusting people, to me, it's not really the best approach to it, because I feel like every person who's done that, Lindsey, Jasmina, I can't remember her name, who was in that relationship, Kara said the same thing. I feel like it opens you up for people coming in and taking advantage of you. There's no such thing as, other than trusting God, right? The ultimate source. I feel like you should watch people, you should see what they do. And as you see what they do, that will give you an idea of their character and their consistency. All the people who are close to me in my life, we've cultivated our trust over years. But to some degree, I mean, open yourself up to the experience, but the giving people all of my trust, I'm like, I mean, would you just trust someone with your child? Like, why would you just give your trust to someone? You know, I'm not going around afraid of people. But I do want to see what is their character, who they are. I want to see them show me who they are. And I'll let that decide for me if I want to have a connection or relationship or more of something with them, or just a friendliness. You know, I can be friendly with anyone, but I don't need to trust you 100% in order to be friendly with you. Pastor Cal pointed out how he applauded that Michael was first doing things out of obligation. He said that he was doing things out of obligation, and then he was doing things because he liked her and he was developing feelings. And Pastor Cal's like, bravo, that's exactly how it works. I would have to agree. That is how it works. That is how it works, because that's why you can fall in love deeper and deeper in love with someone who you've been with for years. My longest connections have been with my family and with my closest friend, you know, spanning over decades. And I would have to say I do fall more in love with people as I get to know them. And it's such a rewarding experience. Let's go ahead and move on to our final couple, Lindsey and Mark. I thought it was so funny. The opening scene was a telenovela. It was Lindsey being super emotional and like letting out her feelings. And Mark was just like, okay. I just thought it was so funny because it was so dramatic. And that's what Lindsey is. She's just so dramatic to me. She doesn't really know how to control her emotions. She reminds me a lot of like kids, you know, before they understand emotional control. You know, they're just exploding everywhere with their emotions. Have you been with him long enough to like be like, you broken my heart? It's the worst. I don't think so. That's just my opinion. I immediately, when I saw that scene, I'm just like, I give props to Mark because he was trying to talk through. He's trying to reason with her. And I just felt so bad. So later on, when Mark had his conversation with Pastor Cal, they brought up the connection to his mom and how Lindsey is essentially reflecting or helping or making him or bringing up that trauma he experienced as a child, seeing his parents disagree and argue with one another, his mother and his father. Pastor Cal was like, well, Lindsey is not your mother. And I was just, in my mind, you know, shady comment. I was like, no, she's so much worse. But I don't know. I don't know Mark's mother. I know Mark's mother has, he said depression. And you know what? Pastor Cal was like, is right. Lindsey's not his mother, but she is the exact energy of his mother. I'm like, whoa, what are the chances that you get paired with someone? There are no such thing as coincidences. You know, I know sometimes we complain about the matches on Married at First Sight. We're just like, why did you pair them together? They don't get along. They don't like, this is disrespectful. Why would you do that? Nothing's a coincidence. None of these people being paired with their partner or to the degree of dysfunction or grace is not by accident. Nothing in this universe is by accident. Mark is being faced with this to work through it. So when people come in your life, it's to work through things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be with this person for the rest of your life. It just means that this is the chapter in your life for you to work through something. So if you want to be in that partnership, kudos to you for putting and working through it. If you want to leave, kudos to you for deciding what you deserve. That therapy session that Pastor Cal had with Mark felt very, very powerful. Then when Lindsey was talking with Dr. Pepper, same thing, therapy session, she was getting really emotional. And Dr. Pepper kept telling her, hey, you know, she's very dialed in. She reminds me of a lot of people actually on YouTube who are amazing with advice, but their lives are like this. There are so many people on YouTube that give great advice, but you can tell based off of the chaos in their life that they themselves are having to work through a lot. So Lindsey reminds me of that. She's very dialed into understanding vulnerability, emotions, all these things. But as far as her emotional intelligence it is very childlike. It's very childlike. Dr. Pepper told her, go to your sadness, not to your anger. That's great advice. I think we can all take to that. I would have to agree. Once you start, just like Steve did with Noi, you know, show them your vulnerability, show them your hurt. They'll be like, oh my gosh. They will feel like, oh my gosh, I hurt you. They'll feel so remorseful when they see your pain, as opposed to your anger. And anger is something I grew up around a lot of. And so it was very hard for me to finally get down to those other layers of sadness, which there was a lot of, because, you know, as a kid, I was very emotional and the anger wasn't something I liked. I didn't like it. You know, I saw it around me. I didn't want to be a part of it. So I would try to go to my sadness, and that was what led to my healing quicker. You know, when you go to your sadness, it leads to your healing quicker. So what struck me about that conversation that Lindsey had with Dr. Pepper was that she said she's sad all the time. And that's where I saw immediately the connection to Mark and Mark's mom. I'm sad all the time. It's just sad. Everything's just so sad. That's not Mark. That's not Mark. That's you. That's that thing inside of you that's calling to be healed. Doesn't matter what your partner says or does. If they're perfect, you're still going to feel sad because you're still in control of your emotions. You're the vessel holding all your emotions inside of you. You have to work through those things. So after Mark and Lindsey had their conversation with the experts, they got together and they sat down and they just talked. The emotions were up there, but then they calmed down and they talked. And I felt like they really had a breakthrough. Because Mark said this, if we can communicate, we can do anything. And Mark and Lindsey had a breakthrough, and I really felt that. I felt like they really just saw each other. Lindsey's always talking about her needs. She also mentioned to Dr. Pepper that he doesn't fill his cup up. He's trying to help everyone else. But what are you doing, Lindsey? That is the weird disconnect, unconscious thing I don't understand. I know Mark is pulling back, and we visibly saw him pull back when she was talking to the group and talking about her emotions and their growth and their experience. He pulled back. There are some things I think with Lindsey, they've kind of built up for him and they've just turned him off, and he's closed off. And that's what happens when you don't fill your cup up. You don't have anything to give back to your partner. So I'm seeing that with Mark. He's not filling his cup up. But what makes it worse is that Lindsey is aware of this to some degree, but she's still trying to like pull at him. And that's like the unconscious part of her, this need for validation and affection and desperation that I really feel bad about. So, you know, my thing would be they're not doing anything different that a lot of couples out there have not done before as far as their dynamic goes. You got to do your own inner work. That's for you to do. You know, again, if you feel like your partner is not meeting certain needs and it's like repeatedly, unless they're absolutely violating your like the basic requirements and expectations of a marriage, you have to stop asking of them to fix you, to fix how you feel about them. You have to decide, you know, if the partnership is worth working on. But I couldn't stress anymore. I mean, every video it's going to be about this. Inner work. Do your inner work. Your partner is only there to mirror to you what work you need to do. The bigger your emotions and the bigger the chaos and the destruction, the more healing you need to do. So after Mark and Lindsey's breakthrough, I felt more hopeful. They looked more hopeful while they were having that conversation with all of the other castmates at the volleyball beach party event indoors. He pulled away. And the experts also noted that while she was talking about her emotion, she deflected because she has a hard time sometimes, I think, sitting in that sadness. And so she uses humor, which a lot of people do. A lot of people will use humor to get out of their sadness. However, it's not always, humor doesn't heal you. Humor doesn't heal you. Going to a therapist doesn't heal you. Journaling doesn't heal you. You got to heal through your body, through working with and through your emotions. So that's my review for Married at First Sight. I wish the best for all the couples. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Make sure you check out my video that I'm about to upload about food for my series Heal, Feel, and Reveal, and get a million incredible tips about how to work through your food. If you guys are interested in my Heal, Feel, and Reveal series, I would highly recommend that you guys check it out. It is a very powerful series that's going to help you to get so much clarity about what you want to do to bring some more color into your life. My channel overall is focused on divine femininity, intuition, energy. Everything is about energy. It's all about energy. So that is what we're here to delve into, is how do we harness this energy, this power within us, and use it. This video that I'm about to upload is going to be about food and about healing through food and about connecting to your body through food and those experiences. Video after that is going to be about manifesting your desires. Do you have a dream, a desire, something you wish to bring into fruition? Watch that video. Manifesting is a lot easier than we think. It's a lot easier than we think. And I'm gonna go ahead and share with you some powerful key secrets and key ingredients I think that people are missing out on understanding, like how to manifest more of their dream experiences into their life. And then for my next video, I'm gonna be talking about stepping into your power. Stepping into your power. If you want to feel powerful in this world, you have to know how to step into your power. I think I'm specifically gonna be talking about my perspective as a woman and learning how to step into my power from that stance. But power, it has no gender. So learning how to step into your power is something that we can all learn how to do more effectively. That is the end of this video. If you guys are interested in any of my art, I would highly recommend you to go look at my website, look at my artwork. If you just want to see some beautiful pictures, go ahead and check it out, and I would appreciate that. I'll see you guys next week for my next review of Married at First Sight. I'll be here. Bye.